given all, what we intentionally did is brought in every possible not every possible perspective, but many, many perspectives. And this was by design when I planned this with Rob and Karen at NSF. The idea was to develop more creative, innovative approaches for studying STEM and dyslexia and other learning disabilities. I'm going to take a stab at a few closing remarks and then turn things over to Evan from NSF, who's the director of the division for research on learning. Or I guess, yeah, research on learning, I got it right. First thing is, my feeling this being here the day and a half or so is a sense of pride in the community. I remember being at LD kind of events with Dan Birch and several other folks here 15, 18 years ago, and there just wasn't that much of this kind of exciting, rigorous research at all these different levels, from high school, comprehension of text and using text in high school, to there were the beginnings of the work in kindergarten, first grade, and phonological awareness work. But basically, the sense that a lot has been accomplished and there's an excitement in the field. And the amount of research in math in LD, if you go back to the turn of the century, it was small studies, just not very much, and not really inspired by what we've been learning from both research mathematicians and math educators. So I think there's something to be proud of. I think another thing that was very personally touching to me is both Karen Chesser and Nicole Bucca, when they talked about that practice guide that we worked on. Ben Clark was part of the team, Madhvi helped with the process. That is really being used in districts as a basis to say, hey, here's a framework for putting research into practice. And that was the goal when Russ Whitehurst and I developed the very first one on English learners, to really come up with something. And that one is, by the way, remains the most frequently downloaded of all, I think pretty much all of the IES guides and maybe all of their publications. So there is that sense of pride. In terms of themes here, what I see emerging, and I can't possibly integrate the neuroscience with the intervention research myself. It goes well beyond what any one mind could do. But I think one of the most interesting findings was when Paul and George yesterday talked about, for predicting future success in science, general knowledge of children at the end of pre-K and in kindergarten. What's exciting about that is it's malleable. Some of these other executive functions could try interventions, we could try to integrate them with reading and mathing, but this is a malleable kind of thing. And Jack got at that in his remarks, where he said we definitely need explicit instruction in reading, but it needs to be a comprehensive program that the language part, the language comprehension, the reading comprehension, the linkages to writing need to be part of that. And I saw that as a theme throughout, that really the role of language, which is much, much harder to measure. I mean, our measures of decoding compared to our measures of language comprehension, it's another world. It's a much more ill-defined domain. But I think the importance of general knowledge and language and vocabulary concepts is kind of a key emerging theme that I think is coming out that can enrich the research efforts. And tied into that is something Karen Karp at least got me thinking about, that when we talk about tier 3 intensive interventions, there's sometimes this more mechanized view that means smaller group size, more time per week, more time per day. It can also be qualitatively different. It could be actually with very small groups of kids, giving them the tools and opportunities to talk about math so that the concepts, because in math you don't just learn a concept, you live with it and you develop insights about it. And through discussion, and we heard that with Sharon's talk this morning, that's part of it, that integrating discourse, and that tended to be the weakest link in implementation, and it's going to take a lot of creative work, but that seems a really exciting emerging field. And with that, I'll turn things over to Eva.
Okay, thank you. I'm Evan Heit. I'm Division Director of the Division of Research on Learning in the Education and Human Resources Directorate at the National Science Foundation. My own research background is in cognitive science, and I just wanted to start off by commenting that I have learned so much in the past 2 days. I think this is a sentiment that's shared by everyone here. We've had such an expert group of presenters, so distinguished researchers, practitioners, and policymakers. It's been a really terrific event. I wanted to start off just by thanking all of the speakers. Thank you. And I also want to give my thanks and congratulations to Russell Gersten and the Instructional Research Group, who are recipients of a grant from NSF that made this meeting possible. So thank you, congratulations. So as you know, the impetus for this meeting was the READ Act, and READ stands for Research Excellence and Advancements for Dyslexia. I would like to express my appreciation for the encouragement from Chairman Lamar Smith of the House Science, Space, and Technology Committee. And I'm also glad that his staff members, Jennifer Brown and Cliff Shannon, were able to attend this event. Now, as you've heard, the READ Act authorizes NSF to support at least $5 million per year in grants, research grants on the science of learning disabilities, including at least $2.5 million per year on the science of dyslexia. So, given NSF's role in supporting all areas of scientific research and all areas of STEM education, as well as our role in working on broadening participation in STEM, I think this is a particularly appropriate initiative for NSF. So it's not quite the end of the fiscal year, so I can't do a drum roll and give you our announcement of everything we've supported under the READ Act for this fiscal year. We're not quite there, but I expect that we will exceed these dollar amounts, and that we will be able to report that we've made numerous research grants on dyslexia and other learning disabilities in the context of various STEM contact areas, including math and science, and these projects take a variety of behavioral education and neuroscience approaches. Looking forward, perhaps even more important, I would like to look forward to the next fiscal year, because under the READ Act, we're going to be doing this for several years. We at NSF hope to receive even more proposals on topics, such as topics covered at this meeting. So we look forward to receiving your proposals. We have several relevant programs. I'm not going to try to list them all out here, but one program that was mentioned was the DRK-12 program, which is NSF's signature K-12 STEM education program. As you've heard from my colleagues, Rob Oxendorf and Karen King, that has a deadline of November 14th. So Rob and Karen are already very popular people, but I'm going to make them even more popular. That they are particularly good people to talk to if you're interested in making a proposal on topics at this meeting to NSF. So like Russell, I'm not going to try to integrate everything we've seen in the past 2 days, and I think you probably did a better job than I'm even going to try to do. I think we are all going to leave with a lot to think about. I was definitely struck by the diversity of participants in this meeting. We've, as I've said, had researchers, practitioners, and policymakers. We've had individuals who've looked at dyslexia and other learning disabilities, individuals who've thought about math, reading, and various STEM content areas. We've seen research approaches that look for commonalities across different learning disabilities, as well as research that is focused on what's distinct about particular learning disabilities. We've seen work that's based in the neuroscience lab. We've seen work that's based in the classroom. And I think so importantly, we have seen great work supported not only by the National Science Foundation, but by IES and NIH as well, that they are great partners in these efforts. So to conclude, and I'll just quote another speaker, we are all in this together. There is great value and there is pressing need for all of us to keep on talking with each other, that this was such a great opportunity for people to come together who don't necessarily see each other all the time. As we make progress on the science of dyslexia and other learning disabilities, and as we work to support STEM education for all learners. And to conclude, thank you, everybody. Are we done? Are we adjourned?
Yeah, we're done.
We are
Meeting
adjourned. Thank you, everybody. We are adjourned.
Safe travel.